Okay, hello. Welcome back to Don't Forget the Human with me, Brittany Chiang, and Lucas Flatter from Flatter
Hi.
Incorporated. Today, we're going to talk about one of Flatter's core competencies, which is in adult education, and talk about what happens when you delegate your learning to AI and how the use of AI either contributes to learning or detracts from the learning process. Really excited to dig into this topic today. Lucas, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a happy Friday here. It's not raining and the weather's nice.
Great.
So we live in a world of summaries, headlines, recaps, quick bullet points, and that was before we had AI to summarize and analyze everything we might want to read. So how does that impact our learning in this environment? What are you seeing?
Um, I think immediately, kind of as a way like to combat all this noise, I've leaned on, hey, I've got this 40-page document or something that I might benefit from learning or getting deep understanding of, and I'll sometimes ask AI, hey, just summarize this for me, give me the high points, even like, show me the any discrepancies. Like I want AI to kind of put those details for me up front. But it doesn't always work out as smoothly or as effectively as you might expect or want it to behave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's the source material and then there's the summary, and then communicating about the summary. And, I think we've been realizing within our organization the importance of reading the source material and how important that is. But even reading, I think, only has about a 10% memory retention rate, as opposed to experiential learning. I think it jumps up to about 75% retention. And then you get to really high adult learning and retention when you get to teaching someone else the skill set. So, we know reading really isn't that great, and the exposures need to be higher than just reading the words on the page. You have to engage in some way to activate your brain. Writing is a big part, and writing with a pen has a different learning and neural network than writing on a keyboard, even. Um, so, yeah, as we're introducing AI learning tools and GPT summaries, and there's a tool out there that I really love called Notebook LM, provided for free through Google, where you can upload a couple documents and it'll make a podcast out of different source material, which is really awesome when you're on the road or something like that. But, how does that impact our ability to learn a new skill over time?
Yeah, and I was just talking to my friend about this the other day where it's like you go through this whole like learning process everybody goes through, like at least part of K through 12 and maybe higher education and everything, and it's possible to come away from that not even realizing like what were the methods that were used to help you learn. And um, lots of times it is, multimodal. It's text and then quizzes and flashcards and videos and assessing your knowledge and pretty much anything that like a really rigid or like really effective textbook might walk you through. Like if you don't have a textbook, are we going back to these effective methods? Or are you just saying, I'll just read it and then or summarize it and then move on?
Tell me a little bit about your adventure in learning how to skateboard or play the guitar. I know those are two hobbies of yours. How have you learned, and have you used technology at all to help advance those skills?
Um, I think, yeah, part of it is that exposure of like I like to watch YouTube videos about things and read about them and everything, but like I found that the most effective method is just, like 10, 20 minutes every day, a consistent practice schedule. Everything else is like nice and like it can help and it can help you build a mental model and but pretty much it's like icing on the cake, and the main thing is, getting out there, whether it's a sport or, an instrument or anything. So I found that like the most effective things, it's like just keeping it out in front of you so you see it more often and things like that to get those 10 minutes in, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a real physical example where you have to, physically hold the guitar or physically get on the skateboard. And there's nothing that replaces actually getting out and doing it. And I think that's the trap, right? Thinking that I've got technology now and I can somehow bypass the learning steps and just, automatically absorb information. But I do think it's an interesting conversation of thinking about where information resides and whether or not I need to store that information in my brain or I've got my AI counterpart with me and can I store some of that information in AI instead of with me? Maybe like a database or a fact sheet or a list of formulas, almost like a cheat sheet on the test. Does memorizing the quadratic equation make you better at calculus? Um, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think yeah, like it's like if I'm able to do everything that like deep understanding would allow me to do with like myself and a tool, it's like yeah, totally. And I guess that's where this conversation will get really interesting. It's like where are things that you do trust, like of course like a formula, like I might have seen the formula so I can just recall it. Oh, that's the right one. But if it's something like a legal contract or like what we're all the time in, like, government solicitations and things, um, I'm not necessarily able to verify that, so I might like say, okay, I'm gonna know it 60% and then 40%, if I'm on a call, I'll just ask the model and that's I've found that to be pretty effective, but then there's like small edge cases where an acronym is completely wrong or a statistic is completely wrong or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, there's actually a term it called cognitive offloading, which was coined in 2016. And it's the idea of intentionally offloading information and intentionally trying to not remember certain things. And I think we can all relate to being up at night, maybe not being able to fall asleep because you have a long to-do list, things you need to get done. And the act of simply, writing on a notepad at the side of your nightstand gives you that confidence. I have this information stored. I don't have to keep running this through my head. It's safe on this notepad. And when I need to go to the grocery store or when I need to start tackling this obscure to-do list that I've taken the time to write it down. And I have a second example. So the other one is with my kids. So I was sitting in my room reading a book one evening and my son came into my bedroom and he said, "Hey mom, I'm hungry." And I think what he was really asking me was that I have a mental inventory of all the foods in the house. And without even thinking about it, I start rattling off a list of potential snacks for him. I say, we have apples, the bananas are ripe. You can have a banana, you can have some yogurt and honey and put some fruit on top. So I just list him out some potential snacks, knowing what the inventory of this food is in the house. But the next time he did that, I took a moment and just kind of took him aside and said, "Hey, son, why don't you go look in the refrigerator and just have some baseline awareness of the foods in the house? And you don't need to come to mom for that. That's something that you can start paying attention to now." But, I think our kids do this without even thinking of it, of just knowing the domains that are covered by their parents and just then not learning those domains at all because they know they can rely on us. Um, and that I think the analogy applies to AI, right? There's going to be certain things we're going to offload to AI and we're not going to store that information in our brains anymore.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And like, I guess it kind of makes me think that like maybe instead of like summarization, we should just be like, just help me label this document or help me like, search through it faster. Like, yeah, I guess like the fear is that like when you're generating or paraphrasing, it's like, okay, where is it actually coming from?
Yeah, let's just talk about that classic challenge. I think everyone can relate to having a 75-page PDF, and in your work, in your role, you have to absorb that information to some degree, right? Let's just use a request for proposal as an example. Um, you've got to open up the document, lay hands on it, read certain sections in detail. What do you think is the best use of technology and the human reader, and a combination of the two?
Um, one idea that I had was like a dynamic highlighting, or so maybe you can like right off the bat say like, I'm gonna offload this. This isn't important. This isn't gonna affect the end result. This is just like, a bunch of, it's a glossary or it's a table of contents. Um, Maybe being able to say like, I feel really certain about not needing to go back to this, but this part I'm always gonna have to go back to. So maybe, yeah, like if I'm taking a quiz or something and I get all of the answers right except for five, I'm gonna pay like really close attention to those five. So maybe just up front knowing like, oh, I'm gonna have to revisit these sections, and maybe I'll skim it the first time and the next time I'll read it more carefully. Those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, I'll be the first to admit that it's rare that I'm going to actually sit and read that 75-page document cover to cover. There are certain sections, like you said, that are very important to read. For me in an RFP, that's section M, right? The evaluation criteria. It's the king of the RFP. It decides how the government is going to evaluate the offer and automatically prioritizes everything we do. And I think I really need to read that and understand it. And then from there, know how it relates to other sections, including the performance work statement and things like that. So I think that's one thing I'll probably never get away from, just reading and having multiple people on the team even reading that same section. A summary is only going to be so good when it comes to those nuance criterias that can be in an RFP. Shifting a little bit though from that idea, I think I saw something really interesting on LinkedIn this week. Brian Elwood in Flatters Network is an author, and he's written several books. And he posted yesterday about the future of publications and the future of books. And he imagined a future where every single published book is going to have an AI companion that comes with it, that has translation tools of sorts where you could alter the reading level, or maybe alter the style, maybe make it more whimsical, more sci-fi, more fun, more serious, whatever the reader's preference is. So I think that is a really cool use of technology to either make the reading more engaging or make it more applicable. Of, hey, take this RFP and make it interesting to an executive rather than maybe a technical expert, of adding a lens for us to learn through.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because it's like, yeah, maybe thinking about the book more as like a source of information that can be manipulated in different forms, and AI is awesome for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it particularly applies to scenarios where you're learning something technical, and there could be multiple ways to learn that. On the flip side of that, when you're reading for pleasure and you're reading, um, I don't know, I had an author on my desk, Chuck Palahniuk. He wrote a book called Diary, and it's one of his fourth or fifth bestsellers, and he's hitting his stride in his style. And something like that, I just, you're not really going to be able to enjoy it unless you read it to cover to cover, pay attention, enjoy the style, immerse yourself in it, and really appreciate the author's perspective and the humanity behind his lived experience. So, when we're enjoying fiction, I think, leave the AI out and just either read it to enjoy it or don't read it at all.
Yeah. And like something that comes up a lot with this stuff is like, yeah, like the quadratic equation thing, the stylistic author thing. It's like, am I going to trust, like, can I get this through other means? Do I trust that like you're giving me like the truth of it? And like, if I ask you to like summarize Chuck Palahniuk or like, or, any famous author, Charles Dickens, it's like you might get like the ideas, but it's like, no, when you read Dickens, it's like a cartoon coming alive. It's like people are just, that's where the human comes in, right? Like the stylistic choices and things. And I guess, yeah, like thinking about, do I trust the AI to retrieve that, or is that something that I'm going to retrieve myself?
Well, you can't retrieve the joy, right, of sitting in your backyard with a cup of coffee and enjoying the reading, enjoying the style, enjoying the metaphor. So those things, I think those things are meant to be enjoyed. But hey, let's go back to the stuff we don't enjoy, right? Like we have to read technical manuals that we do not read for pleasure. We read them to either further our career or increase our knowledge or make us better subject matter experts. So along those lines, if you could just think about the most learning you've done in your job where you've really kind of like leveled up and you felt like you learned new skills, can you talk about a little bit about what that was like and what those experiences that you actually learned from were?
Hmm. It's gotta be, I mean, for me, it's always like, technical things that maybe you didn't think were possible, or you think, oh, I'm gonna have to either get help with this or figure out how to do it, or, but then maybe you start picking at it and it gets easier over time. Like, I think, mm, so I guess the main thing that like maybe it has in common across all these different examples would be like something really challenging that, you know, you can remember like at the beginning how big the challenge seemed, and then you can reflect afterwards, even if it wasn't like 100% successful. It's like, look at, you can see how far you came because it looks so daunting at the beginning.
And
Mm.
you almost don't realize when the skill has been brought on and when you have the skill. And when you have it, it's common sense, right? Then it's hard to understand how anyone else doesn't understand what you understand because you've had so many reps. But yeah, let's focus a little bit on repetition and just getting the experience in because in the beginning we talked about how experiential learning is so impactful. Um, but experience happens every single day in life, right? Waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth, booting up your computer. Maybe you form a bad habit of checking your email every single time you log into your computer, and it's almost more of a bad habit than it is an intentional practice. But all of those experiences over time kind of create your occupational skills that you have and what you're able to do. Um, I know for me, going through the coach education program, there was nothing that was going to replace actually sitting across from another person and coaching them over those 100 hours that it takes to get to that ACC level. No amount of reading, no amount of watching others do it, no amount of study of the competencies was going to get me to be a good coach. I was just going to have to do it. And, I do feel a lot better as a coach just with a couple of years under my belt. And I think experience was really the thing that pushes you over the edge.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to bring up our tool that, it's called Persona Ops. It's the idea that some experiential learning or some scenarios are really aided by being able to speak and like have a conversation. And in the context of coaching, our tool allows you to coach coach actual case studies that we've used in our lessons, like all of our curriculum that JR has been working on for years and years, where maybe one of them is about somebody that's having problem in their new small business, and another one could be about how somebody needs to lay somebody off in the difficult conversation that they're going to have to go through, or think of any professional or personal challenge. um, we've set up some of these where you can say, okay, I'm going to call this case study, and his name's Mike. I'm going to talk to Mike about his problem, and he's going to present his problem. This is the AI presenting the problem from the case study, and I'm going to behave as if I'm an actual coach, which I am practicing to be a coach, and just say, like, how can we make use of this time? All the classic coaching questions, tell me more about that. What does success look like? Um, did you gain clarity? All of the, coaching things that you would go through in a real session, but without the fear of, oh, I've maybe you and I have practiced coaching so many times that it doesn't feel realistic anymore, or I've never coached in front of this group, so I feel self-conscious, or I've only coached twice, so I'm a little nervous. Like, it takes away some of that, the barrier of that. But like you said, like, that's the real meat of it, and then I can go read about it, or watch videos and things, and those are kind of the icing. But also, I guess another aspect is when I'm practicing and getting that those repetitions, am I getting like feedback and like meaningful analysis? Because if I just go out and pick up the guitar and I'm just like wailing on it and nobody ever hears it, it's like I don't know if I'm good or bad, or
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah, and one thing I think is really cool, I'm glad you brought up the persona ops because it makes me think about the user interface and just having a dedicated single use device or single use interface. And this one is for to practice coaching skills, right? And you go into the room and you practice coaching skills. And that's your purpose for being in the room. That's the purpose of the application. And you're dedicating your time and focus to that one purpose. And I feel like that's another trap that you can fall into with using ChatGPT. ChatGPT is like the ultimate UI. You can almost make it a UI for anything, for either ingesting information, creating information, um, learning, teaching, give, take, and the scope of things you might look up on that platform are so varied from personally looking up a recipe in the evening for dinner and in the morning using it to have an Excel formula or whatever it is. And I think those environments, for me at least, create a lot of noise and distraction. And while I love it, I really don't look at ChatGPT for me personally as an environment for learning. Um, I think it's just a little bit too noisy for me personally, and I do like to dedicate my time and say, "Hey, I'm gonna step away from my desk, sit on the couch, and read an RFP, or get out of the office and listen to a podcast while I'm on a walk, or the only distraction I have is nature or something like that." So yeah, I think the user interface is really important to create a good learning environment as well.
Yeah, yeah, like I think there, yeah, like any programmer will tell you that, like, several times you say, "Oh, let's just create a script to do this," or let's automate this, and then you realize you've like wasted all this time like going down a rabbit hole. It's like ChatGPT is the ultimate version of that. Like, it allows every computer person to go down these rabbit holes of like creating artifacts and creating content and summarizing content, and it's like, did we get any closer to our goal after this or not? Like,
Right.
yeah,
And how much can you really learn in 100 days, in 6 months, in a year? Um, I love the idea of incremental progress. And like you were saying earlier, Lucas, like practicing your skateboard or your guitar for 15 minutes a day. every day you're going to get marginally better and until all of a sudden you've got the skills of an expert. And I think that requires planning, right? Requires a foresight and some intention of, by next summer I want to be able to skateboard. By next summer I want to be able to play these certain songs on my guitar. It definitely doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, and like maybe like the takeaway from this is, oh, in order to really learn this 70-page document, you're going to have to take 4 or 5 days, and like there's no shortcut that ChatGPT can provide. Maybe it can help you like plan the next 4 days, you know. But if ultimately you're going to have to, look at it and then sleep on it, it's like you can't cram that. It is what it is.
No. Well, I like that we're both landing on basically the same thing, which is you cannot delegate your learning to AI. You gotta do the learning yourself.
Yeah, because in like a detail about that is like, is ChatGPT going to like be honest with you and tell you like, oh, you know it's 70%, but you really need to spend more time on X, Y, or Z, or are you going to be honest with yourself and about how well you've learned it?
Yeah, and another area I think it can help is to create those multimodal opportunities for that education. So, maybe you're in a lecture and you're getting some information about that lecture, but then AI can help you make a study. You can ask it questions and it can quiz you, or you can make flashcards, or you can add some dimensions to your learning that weren't provided by the course or the degree you were pursuing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At least, yeah, show it to me in a different way or a different format. Yeah, I like that.
So what's on your learning horizon? What are you looking to learn this year?
Mm, what was I looking at? Um, I'd probably continue doing like drawing and guitar. I had an injury on the skateboard, so that's not going to be the sports thing isn't going to be happening for a little while, but probably focus on more like, indoor activities for a little bit.
Awesome.
What
Yeah,
about
I'm
you?
um I'm trying to level up my cooking skills. So, I already cook for my 4 kids and make dinners and things like that, but kind of elevating the cuisine a little bit, learning some new technical skills. Um, just kind of identifying there's a skills gap and there's some things I want to learn and been pursuing that. We did a little hands-on cooking class over our anniversary trip a couple weeks ago and really enjoyed that and took some of the recipes home. So that's one of the things I'm working on. And other than giving me interesting recipes and tips, I don't think AI is gonna make me a better chef.
Yeah, I'm curious if like with cooking, it's like because I'm hungry, does that affect like my performance? Like, do you have to like practice cooking after a meal or like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, the hunger just leads me to expediency and probably a super satisfying snack like grilled cheese, grilled in butter. I'll make something quick and delicious if I'm hungry.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna have the patience for fine dining at that point. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this week as we talked about the changing learning environment now that AI has been introduced and really just focusing back on how humans actually develop skills, which is primarily through experiences. So thanks for joining and look forward to next time.
Yeah, and I'll just say if you're on this video on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever, if you want to comment on, either things that you've used to help you learn with AI or have you encountered this problem of like summarizing documents and things like that.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.